Welcome back, folks, to our guest artist series. We are on episode 20, so thank you for sticking with us. We've been around for a while, and we are thrilled to have so many people continuing to tune in each week. This week is really special. We have a well-known Buffalo celebrity, some may call him. Mike Randall is joining us today for episode 20. Mike has been seen on the Hill, he's been seen off the Hill, he's been seen on screen talking about the Hill. So we're really excited to get this kind of 360 view of Shakespeare in Delaware Park that Mike will be able to present us today. Mike, thanks for joining us this morning. How are you?
It's a thrill. I really appreciate it. I like being a guest, but I especially like being called an artist. So that's nice.
You certainly are, in so many capacities too. And let's get started with that. Can you just describe your role and involvement with Shakespeare in Delaware Park? How did you get started and welcomed into the Shakespeare family?
That's a big question. But the first thing that triggered me when you mentioned the Hill was one of my fondest memories was standing on that hill with Saul Elkin 4 or 5 years ago, talking about how it all began for him. He is just such a treasure and such a great storyteller. And to hear it in his words and sort of visualize what it was, then over the years, it has just blossomed into what I consider one of the greatest theatrical treasures here in Western New York. And, you know, we have tons of theater, more so than a lot of cities even bigger than us. But Shakespeare in Delaware Park, hands down, probably one of our greatest theatrical treasures here in Western New York. I first was involved probably in the 1980s. I mean, I knew of Shakespeare in Delaware Park, but I saw, I believe it was an ad or a press release that we received that Shakespeare in Delaware Park was having auditions. And I thought, hey, that would be fun to go do a little story about people auditioning for Shakespeare. And I don't even know if I knew Saul at that point, but he was a really good sport. And we did sort of a funny little piece about me trying to audition. And I did Jimmy Stewart and Marlon Brando. He played along, and everybody that was involved with it kind of played along. And, you know, within the text of the story, we told the story of, you know, the actual auditions and what was going on and all of that. But then I put in a lot of the shtick. And I treasure that piece because it shows us when we were both, you know, kids. I mean, that was the 80s. So I don't know. He was probably like 29 and I was probably 30, something like that.
I love these episodes particularly because I get to hear about all the different aspects of Shakespeare Hill. We sat down with Saul for our very first episode, and he shared with us the creation of Shakespeare in Delaware Park. And to hear that, and then to hear you share your anecdotes, and then to hear directors who have been on the Hill for years, and stage managers who have been on the Hill, and actors who are brand new, it helps to create, you know, this really full picture of Shakespeare Hill. And just to reiterate what you said, it's really is a Buffalo treasure here. It's an incredible thing we have going.
In my experience of actually performing out there, I realize that there are some people that is just a must-to thing every year, a must go to Shakespeare in Delaware Park. They may not go to any other theater all year long, but they go to Delaware Park to see Shakespeare. And sometimes a lot of them, that's the only thing that they're exposed to all year long. But it's a whole different atmosphere out there. You're seeing a great play, you're seeing great actors, but you're also out in the open. People bring their dogs, people bring little kids. I was amazed at how many little kids were out there. And in the one show that I was in, Comedy of Errors, back in 2014, I was just amazed at looking out on that hill at that audience, at what a diverse audience it was, the age groups, because a lot of theater in Buffalo, and you probably know this, a lot of theater in Buffalo, you sort of hit that one demographic, you know, there's one sort of age group that is bigger than any other. But when you look at a diverse audience on that hill night after night and the number of people that are out there, you're not going to find, first of all, you're not going to find a theater in Buffalo that holds that many people. So you have to do it on the hill. And then secondly, just the camaraderie of the cast, the camaraderie of the audience, the interaction between the cast and the audience, there's nothing like it. It's just, it's magic.
I love what you said about the atmosphere, and I love what you said about, you know, it being a hidden treasure here in Buffalo. And I don't think people realize, but we're the second oldest outdoor Shakespeare festival in the country, which is incredible. I mean, there's just something magic about the Hill because it continues to flourish and grow year after year. It's really It's an amazing thing.
I think the really fun part is to see how each individual director sort of imagines what they're going to do, because a lot of these plays we're all familiar with. We read them in college or we read them in high school, but you don't just take what's on the paper. The directors really sort of take that as just a starting place, sort of a foundation, and build with it. I'll tell you the story of my first audition, my real audition for Shakespeare in Delaware Park. I knew Steve Vaughn and Lisa Ludwig from way back, and they said, would you be interested in auditioning? I was like, well, I've been doing some other theater, so yeah, sure. And I practiced the part. I forget, what part I was actually reading for at that time. And I went in there and I started reading with an English accent. And Steve goes, wait, what are you doing? I said, I'm auditioning for Shakespeare. I said, English author, English actors do this a lot. So I was doing like my Charles Dickens accent, and he's like, no. He says, I forget what he told me to do. He goes, can you do like a New York accent? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, yeah. I mean, like I do a Jackie Gleason impersonation, and, I could do some of that. He says, okay, go on out and practice that, and then come back in here and do it with a New York accent. And I was totally thrown. I was like, totally unexpected. So I did that. I came back in, and I basically did the scene as, Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners, and they loved it, and I got the part in the show.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you bring up, and I'm glad you brought it up, of the assumption that, Shakespeare is like proper English, because I think that's an assumption a lot of people have. And that's another great thing about what Shakespeare in Delaware Park does, is it breaks down that construct. And in doing that, which is something we just talked about a couple weeks ago, it makes it more relatable and it's less intimidating, and people are more inclined to find relation and commonality with the characters, which then therefore makes them feel more invested. Let's talk about your performances on Shakespeare Hill. You've been seen on stages across Western New York. We've seen you as Mark Twain, as Charles Dickens. How is performing at Shakespeare Hill different than your other performance venues and performance experiences?
Obviously the first thing was really getting a grasp of the material. But, the funny thing with that too, Grace, once you start getting into the Shakespeare thing, you really like it. I mean, you really get hooked on it. Or I think you either really like it or you really hate it. Because I know some actors that are really good actors that will refuse to do Shakespeare. It's kind of like I know a lot of magicians, and I know a lot of magicians that don't like to work for kids. So, it's just like they have their thing. But I think the first thing is to get a grasp of, once you have a part in the show, is just get a grasp of the language, get a grasp of the character. For me, a lot of my stuff is solo. I do a solo Dickens show. I do a solo Twain show. And I don't want to say it's totally solo, because without an audience you don't really have a show. So the audience almost becomes the other character in the show, and they're very what would you say, presentational instead of representational, where the actor sort of ignores the audience, or at least pretends that the audience isn't there. I'm talking directly to the audience, so the audience becomes a character. But when I rehearse those shows, I don't have anybody to rehearse with. I'm just rehearsing myself. When I do Shakespeare in Delaware Park or any other play, and there are other actors, it kind of gives another dimension to it. Now you have to play off of other actors. You have to listen to what they're saying. Your cues are not coming from you; they're coming from somebody else, and so it's sort of a whole different ball game once you have other people on stage. But that was my experience as an actor. As a reporter, I just love going out to the Hill, because there's nothing more fun than hanging out with actors who are in costume and makeup and getting interviews and, doing stuff backstage. And, when they do the fight rehearsal before the show, and you see people coming in, the show's like at 7:30, and people are coming in at 5:30 with pizzas and, baskets of food and wine and stuff. There's just nothing like that. It's just a fun thing.
I want to ask about, since, you've been, again, on the Hill reporting and performing, how have you seen the Hill evolve over the years that you've been there, both in terms of audience, in terms of the work that we do? How have you seen it grow, shift, and change?
So you know how we have their new stage is there now. The stage before that used to be the new stage, and before that there was no stage at all. It was just a platform that they stuck out there. So I do remember, and the backdrop was whatever you saw back there, the lake or the trees or whatever. So in that sense, it's evolved. Just what they've done over the last couple of years with the sound and changing and improving the lighting and the sound. So I've seen it grown that way. What's always fascinating to me is, yes, you have your regulars. You have the people that have come every single year or try to come every single year and see both shows. And sometimes you have people that come 2 and 3 times to each show. I ran into kids when I was doing the show out there. I ran into kids that were out there every single night. But then you also have the dynamic of the people that maybe they're new in town, maybe it never occurred to them, or they didn't know what it was, or they thought it was only for special theater people that get it, or whatever. I don't know. When you explain it to them and say, hey, it's free, it's fun, it's family oriented. You're going to see kids out there. You're going to see adults. You're going to see seniors. You're going to see every single demographic of people that live in Buffalo and Western New York. And it's a fun event. And they're like, oh, and then they try it for the first time. That's when I really get excited when I see people like that. And they're like, oh my God, I saw Shakespeare at Delaware Park and it was really cool last night. And it's like, yeah, now you get it. Now you see. And there are a lot of people like that. And again, I don't know if it's people that are just new to town or if it's people that haven't been paying attention or whatever. There's so much stuff that happens in Western New York year round, but in the summer, when there's not a pandemic, there's something going on every single day. But I think once people come out to the Hill and get to enjoy that and sort of find out that, I don't have to be a literary scholar to understand what's going on or to enjoy the evening. I could just be a regular person, and I can come out here with my friends and watch a really great show and see some amazing talent.
Well, you kind of already answered my next question about what makes Shakespeare Hill unique. But I'm curious though, because you did mention there's so much going on in Buffalo during the summertime. Why do you think it is such a summer staple?
Well, I have to say, first of all, I think too that when you first walk up there in the new season each year and you see the giant posters plastered on the front there and the merch table all set up and just the buzz and just the excitement, it's comfy. You bring your own chair or pillow or sleeping bag or beanbag chair or whatever you sit on. There's nothing like it.
All right, so let's take a walk down memory lane. Do you have a favorite memory on Shakespeare Hill?
Well, the first one that I told you about was not during the show. That was when I was just out on the Hill. That's kind of a cool memory. I just always love what they did. Dick Hummert was one of my favorite Shakespeare in Delaware Park actors. He was such a funny man, and I knew him personally. First time I saw him in Shakespeare in Delaware Park, and he was doing a Three Stooges bit. I was like, oh my God, I'm really going to like this Shakespeare stuff. They have Three Stooges in it, I just have great memories of him.
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time. And folks, as always, thanks for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on next week's episode.